Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Star Wars Minute. It's your daily podcast in which we analyze, scrutinize, and celebrate The Last Jedi one McClunky minute at a time. I'm Alex Robinson from alexrobinson.fun.
I'm Pete the Retailer from PeteTheRetailer.com.
And I am Riley Silverman from various internet writing outlets, and you can find me on Twitter at Riley J. Silverman.
Welcome back, Riley.
Thanks for having me back.
We're here to talk about minute 79. Minute 79 of The Last Jedi starts with Rey ordering Luke to stop, and it ends a minute later with Luke telling Rey about the time he looked inside Ben Solo. So Luke has just wrecked the hut, and now they're
Wrecked
getting
the hut
into it.
was Jabba's cousin, right? That was the one who
wrecked
was
the hut. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she yells at Luke to stop, and he doesn't, and so she just cold cocks him on the back of his head.
Yeah, she goes for
That
it.
seems a little extreme to me.
That was my first note, is hitting an old man with a stick.
Yeah. It does not seem like to be the Jedi way to
Well, that's what he gets for not finishing her training.
That's right.
true, yeah.
You don't
maybe
finish
that
someone's
was-
training, you get clocked in the head.
Hey, I'm not a Jedi. Whack.
Should have told you that first. But yes, and so then they get into it. They mix it up.
Yeah. Well, and then she, well, let's see, how much of this, I'm trying to figure out, my notes seem to be in chronological order, but that she kind of confronts him and she asks, did you do it? And then she said, did you create Kylo Ren? And it's a really weird way to phrase it, because it's not, that doesn't seem to kind of necessarily, the answer to that doesn't necessarily seem to answer what she wants confirmation of.
You're totally setting up another from a certain point of view kind of thing by asking a vaguely question like that.
Yeah.
Right. All I did was turn a student evil. He chose the name Kylo Ren himself.
Yeah. He found the Knights of Ren later. I don't know why we're making him Obi-Wan all of a sudden, yeah.
Okay. He's the prime
Point of view
example
one.
of
Yeah.
that. Yeah, the point of view lawyer.
But we're definitely telling it from anyway, it doesn't matter.
And so then she cold cocks him, picks up her trusty staff, and then he kind of uses the force to, again, using his force powers. He just jumps right. It's like riding a bicycle. Once you get back into it, it's second nature.
Right. And I love that he reaches out to his old friend, the Antenna. Because that's his, from the end of Empire, it's like, oh, good old Antenna saved my life. And now he's just like, Antenna, come to me. And
I liked it that he found the antenna from Bespin and installed it on his island.
Yeah. How did the thing from Bespin wind up on Octu? That's never explained. Why don't they?
The same
That's my
traitor that
irritation.
found his hand and his lightsaber also found the antenna.
Right. It's like, I got a hand, I got a lightsaber, I got an antenna. What do you want? It's like, oh, how much is the antenna?
During the combat, Luke takes on a very. I know I didn't have a huge amount of time because I thought there was some connection between the moves Luke does here. Basically, he's replicating the same. He's telegraphing the moves that he's going to be doing when he fights Kylo Ren at the end of the movie. Because if you notice in this, he's not being. He almost lowers his guard at every opportunity with her.
Right.
He swings a stick, and then when he kind of just rests his arms in a weird way. It's a strange fighting stance Luke takes in this.
He's not fighting back, he's just preventing her from actually hurting him, but he's not trying to hurt her, not trying to stop her. He's it's very much like the parent letting the child tire themselves out. Okay. Yeah.
He should have just totally had his hand on top of her head and she's swinging back and forth with her stick.
That's basically what he's doing. Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, but it does go back to the speaking of kids, I try to instill this in my kids a lot because I think it's important and it makes my life easier if I remind them that the Force is for knowledge and defense, never for attack. So, anytime my son grabs a green lightsaber and starts to hit me with it, I'm like, oh no, knowledge and defense. And I think that's the same thing that Luke is, he's using the Force here for defense and not, he's not striking back because he's more, that's the actual teachings of the Force, and Rey is angry and lashing out in her anger. And and Luke is using it not only for defending against her stick, but then also I like the weird kind of shot that we get of him falling and protecting himself from hitting the ground with the force.
Force pillow.
Force pillow, force cushion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when he realizes the fight is over, he just kind of like gently lets himself lower to the ground.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's good. Not only is it good for the representative of the Force, but also where Luke would be. That he doesn't want to. He's more into the traditional teachings of the Force, and also he doesn't want to attack her. He's not trying to make it worse. He's just purely like, okay, like stop.
Yeah. He's letting her rage kind of like, he's not giving her fuel to burn more of her rage. He's like letting her rage like wear itself out, like burn out what it already has, and then calm down.
It seems like if two Jedi are in a squabble, like having a lightsaber duel, like kind of constantly reminding the other one that they're going to turn to the dark side is almost like it's just a way of like getting inside their head, like dark side, like you're gonna, if you're attacking me too aggressively,
right,
you're clearly going to fall to the dark side, so you should chill out and therefore stop attacking me. And then so it's a way of just rattling them, like asking someone, when you pitch, do you exhale or inhale, something that's just going to make them self-conscious about their
great, now thanks.
So then we get to the meat of the episode of this minute, which is we get to see a third version now of what happened that fateful night. The third of the Rashomon trilogy of how Luke's school came to an end. And in this one, Luke says he could sense the evil in him. He turned on the lightsaber, and then he was like, "What am I doing?" But by then, Kylo had already woken up. And it was very Three's Company-esque, like it's not what you think kind of a situation, right. and then things get destroyed.
Well, yeah, this minute particularly ends with him just kind of. It's the start of that. He breaks into, not breaks into.
You're right.
He goes into Kylo's room and is kind of scanning him. And I wrote that it is pretty weird to be scanning sleeping kids.
Yeah.
Well, is this an innovation Luke came up with? Is it something the Jedi did just as a matter of course? It's easy to picture, like, while the kids are all sleeping in their, barracks.
Like Yoda comes in and is like, okay,
Plo Koon
any dark side?
Plo Koon just wandering around and just sort of like sampling what everyone's mood is like, and then being like, ooh, that guy seems like he's getting a little dark in that one. We better...
Not while he's sleeping, but we do get... When Anakin goes before the Jedi Council in Phantom Menace, like we do get the Jedi kind of like probe him for his feelings and his thoughts to kind of like gauge his because like that's why because there's the whole thing about like your emotions make you unsuitable for training. So there is some degree of that, but that's also a conscious child who like knows what's happening as opposed to a sleeping kid. But I think it might be similar to what's happening in the previous minute when Luke is coming stumbling through the rain to find. I think this call of darkness from Kylo is so strong that it leads him to it, as opposed to him just like randomly going, I wonder if any of my students are following the dark side right now. I think he senses the dark side before he comes into Kylo's room.
Okay.
Well, he does mention that he got kind of hints of it beforehand. So I think it does seem like it's a thing that was kind of, in the back of his mind. He's like, I got to remember to check out that... what's the deal with Kylo? He seems to be a little dark sidey lately. But yeah, it is weird. Even so, it's weird to be kind of doing that while he's sleeping.
Yeah, I mean, he's also about to murder him, or at least attempt to. So I think he's already past the level of like,
true, yeah.
You're not doing the right thing right now. And I think it leads into the whole idea of depending on which, like at this point, it's just Snoke when they hadn't really brought in the Palpatine element for sure yet. But the idea of like, similar to what we were saying previously about this is the exact moment that breaks Rey's training, and that's why it's so important right now for this to happen, and for like why she and Kylo are connected right now. I think that when Ben is being talked to as a child by the dark side, like being at this point, Snoke, as far as he knows, calling out to him, it's purposefully to set up a division between him and his master. It's purposefully to get him to turn on Luke. So I think that Luke is being given just enough charge of dark side to make the wrong decision so that it pushes Kylo more to the dark side and make Kylo think that Luke has betrayed him. So I think Luke is being used as a patsy here. So that is why he is absolutely doing a violation of Ben here, and I think it's because he's being manipulated to do so through Ben.
Right. Which we'll get into that tomorrow a little bit too. That does get into his explanation of it. That fits with that. I don't know. It's tough because it spans to today and tomorrow's minute. Well, I'll leave it for tomorrow because it directly related to dialogue that's in tomorrow's minute. But I
was kind of going more to the initial motivation for Luke being in the room to begin with is what
right.
I think we can definitely know what happens next in tomorrow's minute. But I think today, he didn't just randomly stumble in here and decide to check it out. Like he has something has drawn him here, and he's had this nagging suspicion about this for a little while, and this is where it all comes to a head.
Right. Yeah, and tomorrow I'll have something that I think backs that up too. But we'll talk about that then.
Yeah. I'm going to stick with the fact that I think the Jedi did this as a matter of course. That they would read a diary if I'm sure they read all the Jedi kids died. These are people who steal kids from their parents.
They don't steal the kids. All right.
Anywho.
They encourage the parents to give up the children.
Exactly.
For this cause.
So, yes. Well, incidentally, just as an aside, while I was trying to compare Luke's Jedi fighting stance to the end of the film where he's fighting in Kylo Ren, where he's fighting Kylo Ren.
Let the listeners know that there are a ton of air quotes happening over there.
They're throwing around air quotes like nobody's business. The credits for this movie is something like 10 minutes long.
Can't wait.
We're going to have 2 weeks worth of credits for this film. That's
that's like half the credits for a Disney Plus series.
Yeah, exactly. So, well then, do we have anything else for minute 79?
I do want to say that along the same lines of the acting between Daisy and Adam in that previous minute, I think Mark Hamill's doing a lot of great, just subtle facial expressions, like the pain in Luke's face when Rey has drawn this out of him is really good. I like that a lot. And I also really like the effects. It as a precursor for the next film. I like the effects of the rain hitting Rey's lightsaber and the way the steam is kind of coming off of it and adding a little bit of smolderingness to the scene. So there's
detail.
Yeah, the filmmaking is just off the chains for the last couple of minutes, and this is especially some moments where that's happening. There is one I will say to say your comment, Pete, about the did you make Kylo Ren? I also feel like I'm not a big fan of that line read. There's two Daisy line reads in this movie that are just awful for me, and I'm like, why didn't they retake that line? But I guess it's probably because this scene has so many moving parts and there's so much happening that they couldn't just pick up one particular line or get a better ADR of that one line. But it's this line and the one earlier, which is not in my minutes, when she just walks up and it's like, Master Skywalker, I need you to come back with me and fight it just feels so much like Daisy just stepped into her mark. It feels like they rolled a rehearsal and they just used it. It's such an Ed Wood kind of thing. And that's another one too, where I'm like, oh, I wish they'd done a better line read. But it's such a mark for how good the rest of the acting is that those are so distinctly bad in my mind.
Right.
Any other past minutes things you want to comment on? That
we don't have enough time for that. No, so there's a lot, but I only bring it up now because it ties into this line read as well. Yeah. I think that when I was watching this minute, isolated, and I heard her deliver that line, I was like, oh, I wish they did another take of that line. But that's so nitpicky. You're really getting into the weeds of looking for flaws in a film. You're like, oh, I wish this one line had been delivered better. So,
well, let me ask you this one question then. You have all Luke and Rey and that side of the story here. Do you have any opinions about the other half of the Canto Bight?
The two other moving parts.
I'm actually I actually will say that I'm a staunch Canto Bight defender, and I'm also a staunch defender. I think that the Holdo side of the Poe thing makes a lot of sense as it plays out. I think that it's obviously Ryan doing a lot of subverting of what we assume is the expectations of the Star Wars universe of like, well, this guy's the hero, so of course what he's doing is the right way to proceed. And I think there's a lot going on there. And I think Canto Bight, I actually got into a big argument with somebody about Canto Bight recently, and his entire thing was like, well, we didn't really learn anything new about the universe in that scene. And so like his thing was like entirely like, in his mind, it didn't drive the plot forward.
Right.
And in my mind, it's like we learn that storyline is so integral to Finn realizing you can't just run away and hide, that there's nowhere in the universe that is safe from this conflict, because even this like peaceful, beautiful, rich planet is actually steeped in the details of this war and this ugliness in the universe. And I think that I don't like when people call Canto Bight a side quest, because I'm like, no, it is an A plot for Finn, who is one of the lead characters in the film. Like, he is going off in this thing, and it is 100% the driving force of Finn's story. And so I am very, very defensive of Canto Bight, and I think Canto Bight is unfairly maligned as part of this film. And same thing with, I would like to have seen a movie in this trilogy where these three characters got to interact with each other a lot more. But also, when you look back at the original trilogy, A New Hope is really the only movie where all three characters are together for a significant amount of time. Like, right. They also all split up in Empire, and they also all split up at the end of Jedi. So it's not like, oh, this is the one movie that doesn't happen. It's like every single one of these films, your leads all go off in different directions and have their own plots. So
yeah.
I think that's an unfair criticism of this film, particularly because I think each of their stories are very important to them as characters. And I think that Poe's story is very much about learning what it means to be a leader of a group, as opposed to just the cocky pilot in a group. Like, this is how Poe learns the importance of when other people's lives are your responsibility, and when there's like more moving parts than just your swagger. I think Finn's is the threads from the previous film are Finn doesn't want to fight, he wants to run and hide and let it all pass by him, and this is him learning that you can't just do that. And then Rey's we're talking about a lot now, so but
I'd say I think we brought that up a little bit when we had the scene with Luke earlier in this movie, Luke on the Falcon, and like, Luke he doesn't spend a lot of time there in the original. You think of like, oh, it's the band is all together in the original trilogy, but no, like he was there. I think the last time he was on the Falcon, he got a ride from, he off the antenna back to the medical frigate.
Yeah,
and then before that, it was getting a ride back from the Death Star to Yavin 4. It's like he doesn't spend a lot of time on there.
Yeah, you have to assume in between that he probably spent more time.
I don't know. He's got his own ride, But it's important because that scene was important because it's also how his whole adventure began. But like,
right,
as a thing, it's like, oh, he doesn't spend a lot of time there. They don't really spend that much time together, and same deal here. Right. And that's why I like, again, spoilers, we'll get there a lot later, but when we see Rey finally kind of meeting Finn in the end, it's like, oh, hey, I'm Finn. And it's like, Poe. Rey meeting Poe. It's like oh yeah, that's funny, because we don't, because we're seeing it all on screen, we don't really parse necessarily always that everybody's not together, and it makes sense that they haven't really.
I wish they had kept that for the Rise of Skywalker, not have them actually meet until the end of the Rise of Skywalker.
Once they're all celebrating.
Yeah. And she's like, Joe, right? And he's, no, Poe. Oh, Poe, right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I do actually like the moment in the beginning of Rise of Skywalker where they have like a little bit of like, they've been bickering behind the scenes about stuff. Like, I like that. Like, they're butting heads over how things should be done, which is really fun to play out. So I would have liked to have seen some more of that across the films. I think that I love Rey, and I'm very, very happy with Rey's storyline, but I definitely think that it's a fair criticism that so much emphasis happens on Rey that it does kind of give a disservice to the rest of the characters. And I kind of feel like I'll say more about this when we get into Rise of Skywalker in a while, and like whenever we get to that film. But I think that some of the strength of Last Jedi works against Rise of Skywalker, in that you really could look at Last Jedi and Force Awakens as two parts of a two-film film and a sequel, because I think every character ends at the end of Last Jedi, even if the plot doesn't necessarily get to its natural arc conclusion, I think all the characters have a concluding arc to where you can kind of understand what's going to happen next if you wanted to, and you could extrapolate almost any other story from it. That would be like, okay, well, everybody gets to a point. Finn has now become a member of the Resistance. Poe has become a leader. Rey has become on her path to being, like, now she is a Jedi in earnest, or on her path to it anyway. And Kylo is now, he has rejected his salvation, has chosen to be part of the dark side. Like, you could end the story there, and it works narratively for character arcs. And then I think that's why Rise of Skywalker, as a point, is like, oh no, now we have to give all these characters arcs again, but we don't really know what else to do with them. So let's have Poe continue to struggle with leadership, and we got to figure out what's going on with, and like, I think that's like, really quickly, and then I'll stop talking about Rise of Skywalker. I think that's why, like, boy, it would have been great if we had just given Finn that Jedi arc a little bit, so like Finn had a little bit more to do, because or brought in the original idea of like Finn leading a resistance of the stormtroopers, because it feels like Finn doesn't have anything else to do because his story is so well told in the first two movies.
Yeah, and it think on this because you have time, but before something that I'm going to keep bringing up, I feel like in 2 years when we do Rise of Skywalker, is my mental project, my hypothesis that like we shouldn't have been so locked into trilogy structure, and we should have had an episode 10 to be the grand finale of the whole saga, and just let episode 9 be these characters exploring their stories more. So
I 100% agree. I think episode 9 should have been a sequel to episode 7 and 8, and then episode 10 could have been the saga closer.
Wrap up the whole thing.
Absolutely agree with that. Yeah. But I think you could take almost the entire Palpatine Rey plot out of 9, make that the 10th movie, and then have episode 9 be all the stuff with Kylo a little bit to the like you could end the movie with like Rey killing Kylo and then healing him. I think you could definitely have the movie end with like Finn learning like he has Force powers as well, and like by episode 10 he's being trained as a Jedi, and you get to have him do Jedi stuff. 100% that could be. Right. That's I'll save more of that to think about for 2 years from now, but that is, even as someone who very, very, very much loves Rise of Skywalker, I definitely don't think that it's a perfect film. I don't think there's a lot of things that I would change about it if I was given power to do so.
It is interesting that Star Wars is old-fashioned in the sense that it didn't do, episode 9 part 1 and episode 9 part 2 the way like Hunger Games and the MCU, the Avengers. It's interesting to imagine an alternate world where that was true, where it was kind of like
I just said Lord of the Rings, and they didn't do that in Lord of the Rings. I was just like, Lord of the Rings, and they didn't. They turned The Hobbit into 3 movies, which is ridiculous, but they didn't do.
They made up for it with The Hobbit.
I actually, my working theory is that the reason why Disney did the saga as a sequel trilogy is I don't think they didn't want to get stuck up in the saga for too long. I think they wanted to get them done and get them out of the way and then do their own thing with Star Wars, which is what they're doing now. Yeah. And I think Disney was way more interested in seeing how the story films worked. And now with Disney Plus, that changed the game entirely. But I think now they are doing their Star Wars the same way that the MCU does, where we're going to tell a bunch of interconnected stories that aren't necessarily overlapping each other until a certain point. And some may not overlap at all. Like, who knows how the Acolyte's going to play into the current era of Star Wars, like the New Republic era Star Wars that we're getting with Mandalorian and its spin-offs. But that's my theory, is that Disney knew they had to make a sequel trilogy, and they did it, and now they're like, good, that's done. We never have to think about it again, and now we're going to do our own thing with Star Wars moving forward.
Right. Tying up loose ends, more or less.
Yeah.
Luke ends.
He does. Spoiler alert.
Well, yes, that's a lot of discussion about the Rise of Skywalker, which we will have to let percolate for another year and a half or so. But
how it ties into this movie, I think, too. There was definitely because that's the thing, is like you're making like, to talk to your thing about like following the trilogy format, but then not having a singular voice telling that trilogy, I think is very strange. To be like, oh, we're going to do a trilogy, but we're going to let different people do it, but then the same guy do it, and we don't really I think if they really wanted to tell a trilogy, they should have brought in one voice to do a trilogy,
or 3 different. That's there's
Which that was the original plan, but they yeah.
But going back and forth, but didn't serve it as well as much as I love both of these movies, but it could have been better served probably by.
Yeah. Or like when JJ had said, because originally JJ was like, I don't want to do a trilogy, but I'll do the first one. I know that at one point there was talk of Ryan writing both episodes 8 and 9. Like for a long time, that was what was on the IMDb. And then Colin was going to direct it. And I do think that once you know you don't have the same person on board for the first movie, and you're going to have somebody else who's like, okay, well, at least bring on the same person to tell the next 2 chapters so they work together. And so there's a lot of, anyway.
Could also
all this has been said. So,
and it's all behind the scenes speculation, but it could also be why some of those things feel more like an endpoint for some of these arcs is because it was ideas for 8 and 9 mixed into 1/8 that is just like, oh, well, I liked that bit that we had come up with for the next part. Let's just blend that back into here.
Yeah. Or he had things he was setting up for episode 9 that he then didn't get to set him. He was setting himself up for where he was going to have it go, but then somebody else took what he concluded and built from there. Yeah. And then also all of that also Carrie's death changes everything, because there was definitely they've said multiple times that the idea was each original trilogy character was going to have a movie that was like their movie. So Han was episode 7, Luke was episode 8, and Leia was episode 9. So having Carrie die really changes that a lot dramatically.
Yeah, that's also true.
On that note, sorry.
Let's talk about death. No.
Talk about losing Space Mom.
Yeah, so, we're going to talk more about The Last Jedi tomorrow, but we've been doing this podcast for a long time. But were you aware that we have recently branched out into doing more video content? We have our YouTube channel over on, is it Star Wars Minute? Just Star Wars Minute, not The Star Wars Minute.
Well, StarWarsMinute.com/YouTube. That's the easiest way to get there.
That's probably the quickest way to do it.
That's the way to go.
You can get every episode of the season. You can see our lovely faces, see which of us is saying which comments. Sometimes your mind will be blown. You'll be like, what? I thought that was Alex the whole time. And you get to see all our guest stars and so on. And so check that out. StarWarsMinute.com/YouTube. Become a subscriber. Click the like button. All those things YouTubers say. And join us tomorrow on another Star Wars Minute.
Star Wars Minute.
I can come back tomorrow, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, good.
Star Wars Minute.